Mac, picture this.
Ooh,
You're
picture
dead.
time,
No,
story time.
you're dead.
I have perished.
You have perished.
What was my cause of death?
How do you think you're going to die?
I don't know. It's a good question.
All right, we'll get back to that at the end.
All right.
You are, going up the escalator through the pearly gates, about to see whoever you want to see. And to your right, to your left, you are walking through a food court.
Oh, so that it's like the waiting room of the pearly gates of heaven is an airport food court.
Right. But in your mind, what food places are you seeing at this food court? You're 6.
6. Okay.
Yes.
Um, well, 6 allows you to do a pretty easy spread here. So you
Mhm.
have to have Taco Bell in there.
Agreed.
Taco Bell has everything a man could ever dream of. You could just have Taco Bell and I'd be happy enough with it. You have to represent fast food burgers and fries in some way. And like Shake Shack and Five Guys are too big to be a food court. So you'd
Agreed.
probably go McDonald's
Ooh.
there. And
I
then I'd
don't
have
see a lot of sorry, I don't see a lot of McDonald's in food courts though.
you see more Burger Kings than McDonald's in food
Yeah.
courts. You never really see Wendy's, which is
I
bizarre.
was gonna say, I was actually at the American Dream Mall over the weekend.
Okay.
They had a Wendy's.
Oh, how about that? I
Yeah.
prefer McDonald's over Wendy's though.
Okay.
So give me McDonald's there, and then I'll go Popeyes for my like chicken representation there. I love Popeyes spicy chicken sandwich. I just like Popeyes in general. So that's 3. You kind of get your chicken tacos, burgers. You got to have some sort of Asian representation here. I would go like Master Wok.
Yeah.
Master Wok way back in the day. I don't even know if they exist anymore. 20 years ago, Master Wok was fantastic. Their General Gao has always been my favorite, so I really like that. And then you got to get a pizza element in there too. And most reputable pizza places aren't going into food courts, so we're talking chain pizzas here. Um, like you can't really do a Domino's. I don't think they're
You
food
have to
court
accept
style.
that you're getting a Sbarro.
Yeah, so I'd go for my favorite New York slice, a Sbarro, which is not good, but you get some representation in there. And then the 6th, you'd probably have to do like a smoothie dessert
I was gonna
style
say
type
some
of
kind of an
place.
ice cream, right?
Yeah, maybe an ice cream place. Yeah, so for that, I wouldn't really care what it is. That would be probably a revolving door at
Like a
number
pretzel
6.
place, maybe. How about a
Or you
pretzel
could do,
place?
yeah, you could do like an Auntie Anne's pretzel. That would be real nice. I'd like that. Yeah. How about you,
No.
Gil?
Well, I was just gonna tell you, it doesn't matter what I think. People only care what you think. Over the weekend, like I said, I was in New Jersey. I was at the American Dream Mall that had one of the best food courts I've ever seen. By the way, this is the second biggest mall in America, just behind the one in Minnesota.
Mall of America.
Had a hockey fucking rink in there. It was crazy.
Really?
Yeah. So they had a Wendy's, they had a Popeyes, they had a Taco Bell, they had a place that just fried food, they had a weird pasta place. It really had everything. They had a Jollibee, which they don't generally
Oh,
have anywhere. My
yeah.
Filipino family very thrilled about that.
Right, right.
It really had everything. Not only that, I don't know if I can recommend this because it's super expensive, but the Nickelodeon Universe amusement park. It's an indoor amusement park. Unbelievable.
In the mall?
It was in the mall.
Wow. So I've never heard of this place. Maybe because the Mall of America steals its shine, but
Yeah.
I was not aware of this place. What it's in New is how close is it to New York City?
It is right across the street from MetLife.
Oh, okay. So what's that like 30 minutes, 40 minutes outside the city?
30 minutes outside the city. They have a hockey rink. They have the Nickelodeon place. They also have a Universal, I'm sorry, not Universal, a DreamWorks water park as well on the inside.
Wow. This is quite something. So
Blew my
when
tits
you're
off.
when you're on on your way up to the pearly gates, you just want one last stop at the American Dream Mall.
I'm going to go up the escalator and say, please bring me back to New Jersey.
One goo, 3, yeah! Goo. Jaws 3. Goo. King of Queens. Goo. Meryl Streep. Entertainment.
I'm Goo.
And I am Mac.
And we are the Mac and Goo program. We bring you friendship.
Yep. And today we're doing our world famous "What Have You Been Watching Lately?"
What
Catching you up.
have you been watching?
Watching lately. What have you been watching? What have you been watching? We'll be catching you up on a number of movies. We have 8 or 9 here that we've watched from the last couple of months. Some of them kind of brand spanking new, some of them from 2.5 months ago. But more importantly, Goo, we do have to explain that you are recording from Harry Potter's bedroom under
Yeah,
the
I am
stairs here.
once again in the utility closet at iHeartMedia Boston.
They call that the Jeff Fry closet. Think about
Yeah,
that.
could play every position. I voted for Damon Buford.
Oh,
It
maybe
didn't
Mike
take.
Benjamin.
I mean, I'm a
Uh,
I'm a big fan of Desi Relaford, but he never played here.
Goo, hot off the presses here is some movie news, and we'll talk about one of these movies in a second. We had Memorial Day weekend, aka Garfiosa box office
Mhm.
weekend, and this is being billed as the worst box office weekend. Sorry, the worst Memorial Day box
Yes.
office weekend since 1995. 30 years we got to go back to
Bad.
find a weekend as bad, and that's not
Yeah.
even counting for inflation. So this is actually worse. That weekend, the number one movie at the box office, Casper, Christina
Oh,
Ricci's
the Friendly
Casper.
Ghost. The Friendly
Yes,
Ghost.
that movie had a bunch of 13-year-old girls fawning over a ghost played by Devon Sawa.
You know who was the lead in Casper the Friendly Ghost 2?
Lizzie McGuire.
That's correct, Hilary
Yeah,
Duff.
Hilary Duff. That's right.
All right,
Yep.
it'll do it for this podcast, guys.
She played Wendy. That was Wendy in Casper.
Right, but wasn't the first one also Wendy? So she was recast as
No,
Wendy.
no. Wendy gets brought into this one. That's when they were crossing over. It's
Wait,
a
so who
massive
does
crossover
Christina
event.
Ricci play?
Just a girl.
That was her name? It was like the antagonist in
A girl.
fucking
Yeah, girl.
The Girl.
Girl interrupted. Um,
Top of your head right now,
mhm.
can you name Casper's 3 uncles?
Oh, fucking stinky, slimy, and gooey. I don't know.
Okay, you're pretty close, and I don't know this either. Stretch?
Oh, yep.
Fatso?
Okay, sounds right.
Fuck, I don't know the third one. Stinky sounds right, though. Stinky sounds right. I remember Fatso because my cousin was not allowed to watch Casper anymore because he called someone Fatso.
It's like a trivia question right there. Lock that up there. We'll come back to that at
I'm
some
gonna
point.
put when we do our next spooky stuff trivia that we're not allowed to do anymore.
When we do 1995 Memorial Day weekend box office trivia, that'll be one of the 20 questions
I'm
there.
gonna put my my balls on the line here. I was trying to think of something a little more
All right,
not as
sure,
crass, but
sure.
I'm gonna say Stinky, Stretch, and Fatso.
That sounds better than what I was saying. So yeah,
I feel
I'll
pretty
agree with you
confident
there.
now. I feel
Yeah.
pretty confident.
All right. Number one at the box office, Goo, was Furiosa, a Mad Max story, making 32 million over the 4-day weekend, which is obvious. I think they were expecting it in the 50-60 range,
Yeah.
and this fell way short. Um, I don't as good as that Fury Road movie gets rated, which it's off the charts. It won like fucking 4 Academy Awards. I don't know if anyone was really wanting a prequel to that movie. And
It is
moreover,
both a prequel and a spinoff, but go ahead.
yeah, and moreover, um, like as good as Fury Road did, I don't think it made a ton of money until it started getting rated like through the roof. So the Mad Max, like obviously it's a known IP, but I don't think it's a massive moneymaker, is it? Or
Yeah,
am I
so
wrong
both
there?
of the movies that did not perform as well as they should have over the weekend, Mad Max and Garfield,
Garfield, by
they
the way, made
will
just barely a million less than Furiosa, so that tells
they
you something.
will have a second weekend to make up for it this upcoming weekend because there are no big movies coming out.
Yeah, we got a couple week run here where it's
Yeah.
it's pretty open. Yep, Garfield comes in at number 2, 31.1. That's over the 4 days. Third, fourth, and fifth was If, our Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes movie, which made 13 million. If was 16. And then the Fall Guy still making movie, even though it's out digitally as well, made almost 6 million at the theater.
Good. By the way, I was about to, and I'll probably cut this up for like a TikTok video because
Sure.
we need them clicks. We need them clicks. Do you remember during our Fall Guy podcast, our award-winning Fall Guy podcast, I made the prediction that the Fall Guy would have a Top Gun Maverick like summer? I was wrong.
I You were so excited for that movie, and it's still surprising to me that I liked it like a little bit more than you did. I don't know. They marketed the shit out of that movie,
A
so
lot.
everyone's like coming out about Garfield and Furiosa, and like, oh, how didn't it make that much money? Why is no one writing about the Fall Guy not making any money?
I think people have.
I don't know about that. I don't know
You know
about
what?
that.
That's not why.
Write about the Fall Guy, writers, you folks. I won't read it, but write about it. All right. First on the docket here today is Garfield. The aforementioned Garfield just made $31 million in its opening weekend. It's been out for not even a week now. This is a PG rated. You don't have the little peek behind the curtain here. Goo did the notes for the movies he's seen and didn't do it in the style I like doing it. So I'm going to be all over the map here.
I also told you this, I don't know, 3 hours ago. You could have changed my notes.
No, you told me this 20 minutes ago when you logged on.
You're giving the people too far a peek behind the curtain right now. If you could stop telling them about our personal lives.
This is obviously an animated comedy for kids, but also Garfield's been around long enough that it's for folks of our age and a little bit older too.
I also just realized that I crossed my legs again. If you could point out to me when I'm doing this,
No,
because I
I'm
don't
gonna
do it intentionally.
we're gonna need a super cut after this on TikTok. How many times you cross your
I
legs
can't help it.
on Roddy T's? By the way, hour 41.
Too long.
That's pretty good
No, no.
for what this is.
No.
Okay,
Kids
still too
movies,
long.
I'll
Okay,
tell you, I've watched a lot of kids movies over the past.
101 minutes is not bad.
No, but you need your kids movies to be an hour 25.
So you want 85 minutes?
I want 85 minutes.
All right, fair enough to get in and out. I don't blame you on that.
A movie
Roddy
that's not
T's.
a movie that's not on this list is Migration. They got in and out 85 minutes. My kid loves it.
That makes sense. That
Yep.
does make sense. Quite the split here on Roddy T's Goo. 38% from the critics, 81% from the audience. Now, of course, the audience is easy to please. Do you think, and this ties into it here, I think it's actually down to a 30 on Metacritic. Do you think it deserved this low score from
Yes.
the critics?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. This movie is
Really?
bad. And I did leave with about a half an hour left. But while watching this movie, I am pretty open to children's animated movies. I'm pretty accepting of them. As long as I can see what audience this movie is made for, I'm
Mhm.
fine with it. I wasn't sure who this was made for with their it was just back and forth between being kind of slapsticky, but not in a fun way, making weird references to like the 1960s, comic run or whatever it is,
Yeah,
or, Garfield window placards, whatever. So like, I wasn't entirely sure like who would enjoy this movie.
okay.
If you're thinking about, especially for over 90 minutes, who could sit through 90 minutes of this and be like, I'm enjoying what I'm being given on the screen?
That's fair.
I just
That
did
is
it
fair
again.
enough.
You got to tell me.
So this movie is directed by Mark Dindal. Never heard of him. Writers on the movie: Paul Kaplan, Mark Torgrove, and David Reynolds. Never heard of them. This movie stars Chris Pratt as the voice of Garfield, who is doing a voice. You're saying, right, or
A
is not?
little bit. It's kind of like how he changed his voice from Mario just a little bit.
Okay.
It's not exactly what he gave us as Emmett in the Lego movie, which I think he actually did a great job with.
Oh, phenomenal in the Lego movie. Yeah,
It's not different from most of his other stuff, though.
he's really just doing like Andy Dwyer in the Lego movie, just like a really excited version of
Yeah.
his actual self. Samuel Jackson and Hannah Waddingham also star in this. Who are they? Who do they play?
So Samuel L. Jackson is his father, who is a larger cat, who I think is having a little more fun than what Pratt is with his voice.
Okay.
And Waddingham is the bad cat.
Oh, so she's been playing villains
Mhm.
recently
Well, she's
here.
British. If you're British, you gotta play a bad guy.
Synopsis: After Garfield's unexpected reunion with his long lost father, Ragged Alley Cat Vic,
Mhm.
he and his canine friend Odie are forced from their perfectly pampered lives to join Vic on a risky heist. How is Odie in this?
Um, I guess you would look at Odie as like he's us. Like he's looking at these silly situations as like, what's going on here?
Now, this is a real Penn and Teller situation with Garfield and Odie too.
Right,
So
because Garfield can speak, or you think he can because he says it in his head. Like
okay,
John can't understand him, I don't think.
right.
But then, yeah, Odie understands him, but Odie can only bark back.
Now, of course, we go back to when we were teenagers. We saw two wonderful Garfield films
Right.
hit the theaters, in which Bill Murray voiced Garfield. The 2004 movie got a 27 on Metacritic. Goo. Was this better or worse?
I can't remember back to that movie at all.
Okay, Tale of Two Kitties got a 37. Was this better or worse?
I like how they titled the movie, so I'll go with that one. Tail.
Uh, Jennifer Jennifer Love
Tail. Like a cat.
Jennifer Love Hewitt was in one of them. I don't remember which
I
one.
think she's in the second one, because the
Okay.
second one, oh, fuck. I know Breckin Meyer's in both.
Yes, he is.
He plays John Arbuckle. She might be in the second one.
I don't recall either,
You know
but
what
whatever
needs
one
more
she's
credit?
in.
Heartbreakers needs more credit. That's what
Oh,
we've kinda
great movie.
gotten to here, is
Great
Heartbreakers
movie.
deserves more credit.
Whatever one had Jennifer Love Hewitt, clearly best Garfield movie
Yeah.
ever made. As a fan of Chris Pratt and as a general fan of Garfield, like I don't mind Garfield. I'm not up or down. I really have no desire to see this movie go.
Yeah, I don't know why they had to go back to the Garfield well. Was it an issue where, like, they lose the rights to the property if they don't put a movie out right now? So they just kinda rushed one out there? Because even the story told in the movie wasn't necessarily like it had to be a Garfield movie.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here looking at it. So they put it in Memorial Day weekend, expecting it to be this
Big
blockbuster.
numbers, yeah.
And I don't know what audience they're reading or who's leading them down that path because I don't and I am actually looking at 31 million as like double what I would think it would make on opening weekend. So I just don't know where they're getting their information from. They got duped here. That's what I think.
Also, my biggest takeaway, like, obviously this movie wasn't made for me. My 3-year-old son could not sit through 1 second of this movie. He was just
Yeah,
moving
it's
around
not great.
constantly. I'm handing him snacks to try and keep him going. He just did not care for
It's
this.
fully animated too. It's not
It
right
is
like the
fully
Bill Murray
animated.
ones. Yeah, okay. All right. So that's not great for it. And at some point you're gonna see Furiosa before me, but maybe we'll review that once it hits streaming. Um, I I'm not gonna pay to see that movie again. I don't have much of a desire to see it, so I'm not gonna spend
Oh,
money on that.
you know that Garfield doesn't like Mondays? He likes lasagna.
It's very relatable on both
Mhm.
fronts.
Yeah.
I actually think there's a lot of splashback against lasagna. People think there's too much going on with lasagna
Oh,
sometimes.
Hannah Waddingham, she was speaking to one of the, the media companies that is at the red carpet with her, and, she was going through saying that she prefers pizza over almost everything, and they said, "How about lasagna? Keep in mind, your movie is about lasagna," and she said,
Mhm.
"Lasagna has too much going on."
I it's really it's noodles, sauce, and cheese. It's really not
Meat.
much.
No, there's layers. Let's say there's 7 layers.
Yeah, but it's just you're just repeating the layers. There's
Right, but
4
you have,
layers,
like, 3 or
3
4
layers.
different things going on there. Have you ever had
Again,
a 100 layered lasagna?
no. No,
There's a
you know
place
what
in
you know
Harvard Square that had that. It was pretty good.
I am I may be a connoisseur of pizza. I don't know, maybe you wouldn't go that far. You and I both love our pizzas.
I do, I love
I
pizza.
I love deep dish pizza. I do think it relates more to lasagna than it does, a pizza pie.
Mhm.
However, it's the best version of
I mean,
lasagna.
also, I think you and I, we have a similar taste in the fact that we love meatball and ricotta pizza,
Yes, yeah.
which a lot of places call it lasagna pizza.
It does give you lasagna type flavors, so that's fair.
Oh, also,
Uh,
while in New York, I had a pizza pie that was a chicken Caesar salad
oh, yeah.
pizza.
Yeah, that is so I don't think here's my I'm pretty simple when it comes to pizza. I love a pepperoni pizza. I'm gonna order that 90% of the time. If I'm not ordering that, it's gonna be the meatball ricotta, maybe a buffalo chicken, maybe a barbecue chicken, maybe a chicken bacon ranch. But I'm mostly going pepperoni. I don't like these pizza places that are like making it just so people can be like, oh my god, like commenting on
That's what
Instagram.
I did. I walked in and I said, "Oh my god, look at all the pizza."
A chicken Caesar salad pizza is not something that I'm gonna
I
order.
walked into this place and I'm like, "Give me that meatball ricotta, give
Mhm.
me this spinach and artichoke, and what
Yeah,
is that back there?"
I wouldn't
They
order the
said
spinach and artichoke either.
they said that is a, they said, "That is a chicken Caesar salad slice of pizza." Upon ordering it, you realize that what they did is they cooked it dough, cheese and chicken, and then they added the lettuce and sauce and croutons after.
If it's green and leafy, get it off my pizza. Even the little basil leaves, I usually take them off. It's too much. I don't like the texture in my mouth.
Mhm.
Goo, next up,
Yeah.
a movie that came out the week before
Oh, by the way,
Garfield.
Garfield's second worst movie on the year for me.
Really?
Yeah.
How many
I put
movies
it
have you seen
below
now?
Ghostbusters.
Okay. How many movies are you up to now? I think I'm up to 19.
16 or 17, maybe?
All right. Next up is If. This came out May 17th, obviously still in theaters. It's up to 63.5 million domestically, over 100 internationally. It's doing pretty well money-wise. This is a rated PG animated comedy and drama with a runtime of 104 minutes, so longer than Goo wants, and admittedly, maybe 10 minutes too long, but also this is one of those movies that if they had gone down a different path, I would have been happy for another 10 or 15 minutes. Just I had some issues with the movie. On Rotten T's, 49% from the critics, 89% from the audience. So again, a massive split here, a 46 on Metacritic. So the critics are pretty disappointed. The audience has generally liked it. Gil, you have your hand up.
Yeah, my question is here because it was teased to us either from Krasinski or from Reynolds as a live action Pixar movie. Do you think it had that feel?
It's pretty spot on, but I don't know if that's a good thing, and I'll
Oh,
get to that in a
no.
second. Because the recent Pixar, it does feel a lot like the recent Pixar stuff where they've middled the audience, sort of what you were talking about with Garfield too. Go, you got your hand up again.
Yeah, the movie is rated PG. Do you think it would have been better with an R rating?
No, I don't think it would have been better as Happy Time Murders. I don't.
Okay.
This movie is written directed by John Krasinski. Obviously, we know him from The Office, but in his writing and directing career, A Quiet Place Part 2. He also has a writing credit on the third one coming up here in a month or two. Synopsis: a young girl who goes through a difficult experience begins to see everyone's imaginary friends who have been left behind as their real life friends have grown up. This movie stars Ryan Reynolds as Cal, Kaylee Fleming as B, John Krasinski as the dad, and Fiona Shaw as the grandmother. And Goo, here is a hell of a voice cast here
Yeah.
that I'm going to run through. It's
I would
honestly
almost
good.
say that the voice cast is distracting in how many stars it has.
Yes and no. Sometimes it's fun to play that guessing game in the theater too, like trying to figure out who the voice actor is. And I actually wanted more of these characters.
You know what
This
I
is
would have
my
guessed for all the voices?
oh,
Dave Coulier.
okay.
Fucking
All
chameleon.
right. Steve Carell is Blue, Phoebe Waller-Bridge is Blossom, Louis Gossett Jr. as Lewis. Those were our three main ones. They were all very good. Aquafina as Bubble, Emily Blunt as Unicorn, Bradley Cooper as Ice, Matt Damon as Flower, Bill Hader as Banana, Richard Jenkins as Art Teacher, Keegan-Michael Key as Slime, Blake Lively as Octopus, Sebastian Maniscalco as Magician Mouse, Christopher Maloney as Cosmo, Matthew Reese as Ghost, Sam Rockwell as Guardian Dog, Maya Rudolph as Alligator, Amy Schumer as Gummy Bear, Jon Stewart as Robot, and Goo, Brad Pitt is in here as a character named Keith, which I really enjoyed doing the prep for this. So in the movie, we see the character. Actually, we don't see the character Keith. The character named Keith is mentioned 3 times because he's an invisible imaginary friend. So it's sort of an ode to
Like
his
Deadpool.
cameo in
Yeah.
Deadpool.
Okay.
So that made me laugh going through this. I wish I had known that going in. Q, I'm glad you asked me about Pixar here. My initial thoughts, and this is what I tweeted out like 15 minutes after I saw the movie, is this movie has some issues, and my main issue with it is it's not as fun as the premise promises or as that voice cast promises. It just like falls victim to that same issue that a lot of the modern Pixar does. Who is this for? Is it for 6-year-olds? Is it for adults? Because this sort of met in the middle there. Now, the theater was decently full with kids who mostly enjoyed it, didn't really talk through it. So it did entertain kids enough. But like I wanted either a little bit more of a serious tone to make it more adult oriented, or go full all out and spend more time in this like imaginary world. And it didn't do either of those two things. So there is still like a nice heartfelt story at the bottom of this, and like at the end you still have a heartwarming feeling and you laugh a few times throughout. This was like promise not delivered. I have it at 28 hot dogs,
No.
my number 8 movie of 2024, and that like 28 range is usually movies that I really wanted to like and it was disappointing, or movies that should have been terrible, but like kind of outkicked their coverage. I just wanted more from this. And this is one of the movies I was looking forward to most for this year because I thought that with Krasinski and Reynolds involved, it was this sort of passion project that was really going to hit those two markets for kids and adults. And you get what they're going for in here. It just doesn't quite hit the mark. But like, it's still like if I didn't go in with my expectation, I think I would have liked it a little bit more. It's still an enjoyable movie. And obviously, you see that with 89% from the audience. But as far as the critics go in the 40s there, I totally get that.
Question, third and
Yeah.
final question on this movie. And if you don't want any spoilers, skip ahead about 30 seconds. Mac, is Ryan Reynolds imaginary?
Ryan Reynolds is imaginary. And that's the other thing about this is like it's really obvious what's going to happen in the movie. So as a little kid, you wouldn't have picked up
As
on that.
someone who hasn't seen the movie, yes.
Yes, that was like pretty clear that that was going to be the whole plot twist. It is a nice so the way they do that is actually pretty good. Even though they're that's going to happen the whole time. I really like the way they handle that. It's just I don't know. That movie could have been way better. As it is, it's good enough, I
It's kind of
guess.
like how in Detective Pikachu, he was the dad.
Yes, it is exactly like Detective Pikachu. Another Ryan Reynolds movie. How about that?
It's easy to
You're
make connections sometimes.
crossing over right
Yeah.
there. Goo, next up, Unfrosted. Unfrosted came out on May 3rd on Netflix. And I have to talk about this
Were you
movie.
able to sit through this in one sitting?
This was one of the weirdest experiences I've had watching a movie in a while because I thought it was going to be way worse than it was. Granted, this movie's terrible. Don't get me wrong. I was expecting all time bad, and it's not quite that, which is what I want to talk about it. So this is PG-13, like I said, on Netflix currently. Biographical comedy history, runtime of 97 minutes, so it's not super long. Roddy T's 43% from the critics, 51% from the audience. So everyone's just so fucking confused the way I am. On Metacritic of 42, this movie, first of all, this should be the main gripe right here. This movie never should have got made. This is written by Jerry Seinfeld, Spike Ferenstein, Andy Robin, and Barry Martyr, the team that gave you B Movie. Goo. I don't know why they would ever reunite. I don't know why anyone would sign off on them reuniting, but they all wanted to again take 25% credit for this fucking terrible movie. Obviously, we know Seinfeld. Ferenstein was also a writer on Letterman for years. He did some Seinfeld stuff. Andy Robin wrote for SNL, did some Seinfeld stuff. Barry Martyr did Nightstand, one of your favorite 90s
Oh, I
TV
do like
shows.
Nightstand.
Yeah. Again, why on earth would you reunite this crew from what was B movie 2005, 2006?
Yes,
And
and Seinfeld also recently, like a coward, apologized for the sexual undertones of B Movie. Grow up.
uh
Best part.
also this is Jerry Seinfeld's directorial debut. Like I don't know.
He didn't
I
wanna
don't
no, he wanted the right project.
I just everything surrounding this movie is fucking bizarre. Synopsis: In 1963 Michigan, business rivals Kellogg's and Post compete to create a cake that could change breakfast forever. This movie stars Seinfeld as Bob Cabana, Rachel Harris as his wife Anna Cabana, Kristen Slater as Mike Diamond, Jim Gaffigan as Edsel Kellogg III. And actually, this movie has even like a longer cameo list than If does, so I'm not going to do it. It's not even worth going through. You could subtitle this movie Cameo or Cameo the Movie. But what made me laugh like 3 times in this movie is Kyle Mooney, Mikey Day, and Drew Tarver as Snap, Crackle, and Pop. They were fucking super funny. And when they were involved, I wanted more of like that humor. It just they weren't in it enough, and it was so heavy on Seinfeld. And Gil, I think now that we're 25 years clear of the end of Seinfeld, I think it's pretty clear that like that show was funny because of Larry David, not Jerry Seinfeld.
Well,
Can we
Larry
agree
David
on that?
he wasn't a writer on the show for all 9 seasons.
I understand that, but he was involved in the way that show got made and it being called Seinfeld. I mean, I think we can confidently say that that show was ever as funny as it was because of Larry David. So maybe that's manifested itself too because it's not like Seinfeld did a ton of work after that show. I
Not
will
that he
say
had to. I don't think he had to do a lot of work after
yep,
the show.
fair. I will say I do enjoy comedians in cars getting coffee, but consistently he's the worst part of that show. The guests are the best part of the show.
Well, but also, I mean, you're going up against 3 of the best character actors or sitcom actors of all time.
No, I'm talking about Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. I'm not
Oh,
talking about his character in
no,
the
you know
show.
what? I'll say the same thing for that show too.
Yeah. um, again, there's a like 30 minutes into this movie, I was like, this could be the worst movie of all time.
Okay.
But then, like, the next 30 minutes, they did enough funky weirdness that I was like, oh shit, they should be doing more of this. And they're just doing a smidge of this. There's a version of this movie that could have worked. If it wasn't written and starring Seinfeld, if there was someone else in the driver's seat there, I think it could have worked. Maybe not killed it, but worked to a much better degree. I really did like a couple of the things they were trying to do in here that just simply couldn't execute it. But this movie is not like biographically accurate at all. They just took like 2 or 3 breadcrumbs and made the story from that. So I like the idea, like, who really cares about the true history of the Pop Tart? You might as well make a
Right.
fun movie, which is what they were going for here. They just didn't achieve that. Again, I can't underscore how terrible Seinfeld is in here. And the writing is also really bad. But when they did, and there was a couple other characters like Snap, Crackle, and Pop that killed me. There was just not enough of that. There should have been more of that. So I got this at like 18, 19 hot
Oh, wow.
dogs. It's probably, there's still 2 or 3 movies on the year I like less than this. Um, I don't think it's worth watching. Don't get me wrong. And obviously 18, 19 is not a good score. But there is, for those that have watched it, I'm interested to hear from them because I wonder if they would agree with me that there is a version of this movie that could have worked. But as is, it's pretty bad.
Questions 3.
Yeah.
You have already kind of answered one of them. I was going to ask you, was this funny?
I laughed a couple times. I
Okay,
did.
that's
I
good.
did. Overall, not
Question
funny though.
number 2 is, was this just a parody of all of the corporate dramedies that came out last year?
So they were maybe doing that, but again, it was hard to do parody with Jerry Seinfeld because like he he just should not have been in this role. Like he is such an unbelievably bad actor when he's not playing himself that it's really hard to get behind any scene he's in. So I do think they were parodying that stuff a little bit,
Yeah.
but the more fun stuff in here was all the people playing these mascots and these characters that like in 1960s it's just funny. Like that dynamic was funny. They didn't do enough of that.
I forgot my third question.
All right, good enough. I just it was on Netflix. It was like a fucking Friday morning. I had nothing to do. I watched Unfrosted. I don't recommend it, but if you did, I'd like to hear from you. Goo, next up, movie I have still yet to see. I've almost pulled the trigger a couple times. Challengers. Challengers hit theaters on April 26th. This is an R-rated sexy tennis drama with a runtime of 131 minutes, just over 2 hours. On Roddy T's, 89% from the critics, 73 from the audience, and 82 on Metacritic. So critics are very much enjoying this. The director Luca Guadagnino is always done well with critics. Written by Justin Kuridzikis. That's a nice Greek name for you there. This stars Mike Feist, Josh O'Connor, and Zendaya in their sexy throuple. Synopsis: Tashi, a former tennis prodigy turned coach, turned her ex-husband into a champion, but to overcome a losing streak, he needs to face his ex-best friend and Tashi's ex-boyfriend.
Right,
Ooh,
right, right. So first
sexy.
off, number 1,
Mhm.
biggest thing here, it is being sold as the sexiest movie in a long time. Not that sexy.
I don't know if it's being sold as the sexiest movie of all time, but it's
Not
definitely
not
being sold
all
as
time,
sexy.
but like recent history.
I don't
A
know. I
lot
think
of
you're
critics are
overselling that.
no, a lot of critics are starting their thing that just be like, "This is so sexy." It's not that sexy.
Okay. My main question here
Yeah.
is how many time jumps there are in this movie? Because
Oh, this is
clearly,
it's a nonlinear timeline of just going back and forth between now, back
right.
then, making the characters look a little bit younger. Zendaya is great in this, and the 2 other actors are also very good. I'm not the biggest fan of the Trent Reznor score in this. I think a lot of people love it, and they think it plays up the action. I think it's actually kind of distracting when
Hmm.
watching the movie. I also don't love the action of the tennis in this. They do a lot of POV from the ball, which I don't necessarily love. Um, I found a lot of it, and I've seen people that love the fact that the conversations, it's like a tennis match of going back and forth.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So they're saying the writing is the
Right.
strong point.
But I would argue that every conversation is people talking back and forth.
Yeah, but not in a tennis match way. Some people don't care about winning or losing the point. I would
Yeah.
argue most conversations are people just trying to run out the clock here,
It's
you
like
know?
me on this podcast.
um, I don't like. I was pretty excited when this movie got announced, and
Yeah.
then as it got up to it, I was less excited. But then it was scoring really well with critics, and then when you saw it and kind of gave me that review, it kind of knocked me down another peg. So I haven't paid to see it. It should be streaming pretty soon, I'm assuming. But this is like if you look up best movies of the first half of 2024, a lot of critics will
Yeah, a
list
lot of
this.
critics love this. The audience, what'd you say the audience gave it?
73%.
Yeah, I think a lot of the audience is like, they love certain parts of it. They don't necessarily love it. And I would also I thought a lot of it was pretty obvious of what was
Okay,
gonna happen
sure.
because you're dealing with, it's a bit of a love triangle where you have an alpha and you have a beta.
Mhm.
Where do you think that this strong female character is gonna often go to?
Yeah, no, that's true. Now, I did hear they hang dong in this movie. Is that true?
Right. So also keep this in mind. I think movies moving forward is that when you see that there's nudity, strong graphic nudity, just assume cock.
Nothing from Zendaya though, right? She
There's
doesn't
some
drop
thong
trout?
action. There is some
Okay.
see-through shirts.
Let me ask you this. Now, this is a movie that I don't think we'll have time to talk about at the end, but you did see recently.
Yes.
Anyone But You, Sydney Sweeney, couple sexy scenes in that. Was that movie sexier than this movie?
I might give it the sexy edge, just a slight sexy edge.
Anyone But You over this?
Yeah, slight
Okay.
sexy edge.
All right. Well, that movie was sexy though. So
Yeah,
this
that movie
movie is
was
sexy.
sexy. No,
Okay.
I said it is sexy, just not the sexiest movie in a
Fair
while.
enough.
I've seen sexier movies recently. And
Fair
then
enough.
also, they do something at the beginning of this movie, and I'm like, I bet that's gonna come back into play later.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it does.
Okay. All right. So it sounds like your main gripe, honestly, is the direction. You didn't care for Luca Guadagnino's POV.
Um, I guess my main gripe is the lack of sexiness because I was expecting a porno.
Full
Really.
tang.
Yeah, I was expecting just constant penny. Um, but I think it has to do with
You were
that.
you were
And
pissed
then
Zendaya didn't go airtight.
no, and then I just thought that some of the story of settling on the simp and assuming that she's just gonna stick it out with this guy, that was never gonna happen.
All right. I think people get bored in their regular. You know what this movie have you heard of Book Talk Goo? It's mostly like 30-year-old women plus that are like seeking sexiness in their life, so they love these sexy books. That's what this movie is for, isn't it?
It's for those of us who love Bridgerton.
What did you give this for dogs, by the way? Do you
I
remember?
think around like a 30. Like once again, I don't hate it.
Mhm.
I just wanted more sex.
Fair enough. Who couldn't agree with that?
Also,
Next,
what a deceiving trailer as well. What a deceiving trailer.
well,
They show
because of the
these three
sex.
on a bed, and
Yeah,
you're like, "Oh, we're gonna see something here."
yeah.
No, we don't.
Maybe a little skiing action.
Yeah.
Next up is Abigail. Abigail came out April 19th in theaters. I believe it's digitally streaming right now. I don't know if it's that one where you got to pay the full fucking $20 or if it's at rentable status at the moment. This is a rated R horror and thriller with a runtime of 109 minutes. On Roddy T's, 83% from the critics, 85% from the audience, a 62 on Metacritic, which is probably more how I'm feeling about it. Written by Steven Shields and Gary Busick. Not Busey, but Busick. Oh, Guy. Sorry, not Gary. So that would be a massive change there. You might know him from Ready or Not, Castle Rock, and each of the last two Scream movies, Five Cream
Oh.
and Scream 6. This is directed by the team behind those three movies, Ready or Not, and the last two Scream movies, Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett. So these are guys that have sort of been making these pseudo horror movies the last decade or so.
Mhm.
Synopsis: after a group of criminals kidnap the ballerina daughter of a powerful underworld figure, they retreat to an isolated mansion, unaware that they're locked inside with no normal little girl. This stars Melissa Barrera as Joey. You would know her from those two Scream movies. Dan Stevens as Frank, who's pretty good in this. Alicia Ware plays the titular character, Abigail. William Catlett as Rickles. Catherine Newton as Sammy. Kevin Durand as Peter. Angus Cloud.
Kevin
which I
Durant.
believe
The Slim
Durand.
Reaper?
He's the one that Durand is also the one that does the mocap for the mean guy in the Apes movie.
Oh,
I believe this is Angus Cloud's last movie here, Goo, as Dean, Giancarlo Esposito as Lambert, and Matthew Good as the father. So pretty strong cast, and I would say they were all pretty good. I just didn't really care about the type of horror in this movie. So she's a vampire. The little girl's a vampire. The whole premise of this movie is they kidnap this little girl for a ransom, and then like 25 minutes in, they realize she's not a little girl. She's a vampire, and they're stuck in this house with her. So a fun enough premise, but I like my horror movies like really, really scary, and anything vampire centric is not at all for me. So the characters are good in here. Like each character type is like established well, and you also know exactly what's going to happen because of the character types. Um, there are going to be some people that like this movie a whole lot more than me. That if you like these like sort of pseudo horror movies that aren't really horror but are kind of darkly funny, this might be up your alley. Like when I watched this movie, I was like, I bet Keith's really going to like this movie. That was my main takeaway. I got it at 26 hot dogs. It's my number 10 movie of 2024. There's some, I'll say there's plenty of good stuff in here to make it a baseline, like decent movie. I hate vampire stuff. It doesn't do it for me. So I want different horror movies personally. You got
yeah.
nothing on
No,
Abigail.
it sounds great. It sounds Dracula.
Next up, Civil War. Civil War came out April 12th. This is an R-rated. I'm having trouble classifying this movie based on what you have said about it. So it's an investigative journalist drama,
Yes.
essentially, right?
Yeah, done. Yeah,
That's
it.
what you would call it.
Yeah.
Runtime of 109 minutes, so under 2 hours. On Roddy T's, 81% from the critics, 70 from the audience, 75 on Metacritic. So again, the critics are liking this, not loving it, but liking it quite a bit. The writer and director is Alex Garland, who's done a number of pretty good sci-fi projects to this point. Is this a lot of sci-fi, or is it not much sci-fi?
No, it's a post. It's not apocalyptic. It's like a post. It's in the future of like, hey, what could happen here?
Okay. This stars Kirsten Dunst, Wagner Moura, Kaylee Spaney, Jesse Plemons, and a couple other ones
Clemens does
that.
not star in this movie. He is in one scene.
All right, fair enough. Well, Plemonade.
He made
I
Lemonade.
This, if not for nothing, we got Plemonade out of this movie.
Yes.
Synopsis: a journey across a dystopian. I think that's the word you were searching for.
I did
A
put this in there earlier. Yes, dystopian.
A
is what I was looking
dystopian
for.
future America following a team of military embedded journalists as they race against time to reach Washington, D.C. before rebel factions descend upon the White House. Now, that synopsis and this trailer make this movie out to be like this heart, like a Sicario type, actually, is what I felt like this was going to be heart racing wise.
Um, I feel like the biggest issue here, and
By the way, I haven't seen this movie
yeah,
yet for the folks at home.
I think the biggest issue here is what we saw in the trailers, what we saw on the movie posters, and also the name of the movie being Civil War.
Mhm.
And you're expecting this to be more about the war. Why are we at this civil war? Is a side being picked as to, like how we got here? But the fact that this movie really has nothing to do with the Civil War, like they go out of their way to have it be Texas and California that has left the nation, and that is the side of obviously two states that don't agree in real life. So that is what they did there. And this movie really just has to do with those reporters trying to go from New York to Washington to get a quote from the president who was in his third term. That is the only thing that they kind of put their neck
Oh,
in
so
the
we can
line
go
for.
beyond 2 terms in this world now too.
Nick Offerman, yes.
Huh, that's interesting. Now, this movie gets less and less interesting as the days pass. I missed the screening for this, and then the minute I heard what this movie was about, I was like, "Oh, I don't think I'm going to see that one for a while." If you had to give the folks a recommendation, first of all, what's your dog score for this?
I think I have it around like a 31. Like,
So you
once you get past the fact that
mhm,
this movie really has nothing to do with war,
yep,
or about Iron Man versus Captain America, or about the, Guns N' Roses song,
sure.
like, okay, this is a very well acted movie. All 4 leads are great in it, and then, of course, the Plemon seed is one of the best heart racing scenes that you'll see in a while, but I don't think I loved it. And also, like I said, with the Zendaya movie, there's some really predictable stuff here
Mhm.
that once you get to it, you're like, "Oh, I was waiting for this."
So my question then is obviously 2 movies that you kind of found middling. What would you recommend? Like if these were both streaming digitally tomorrow, Challengers or Civil War?
Maybe Civil War because I love that Plemon scene.
Okay. So well, you didn't ride the fence there, so credit to you. You made a decision
I
there,
could have
Jake.
rode the fence like the makers of this movie.
Next up,
The title, by the way, the title really is the most, like, disingenuous title since
did
No
this
Time
movie
to Die, where James Bond had more than enough time to die.
did the movie lose like 2 dogs because of the title of the movie?
I really think so, like, he got people in the door with
Yeah,
Civil War,
right.
and everyone sat there and said, "Where is my Civil War?"
Now, just based off the way you've described the 2 movies, I would lean Challengers strictly for the
Yeah.
Zendaya thong scene over the Plemonade scene, but
I
what are you
don't
gonna do?
know in this movie who anyone was rooting for, like, what side anyone was on.
So that I will what I did read about this movie, because I was interested when it first came out, that was very intentional. They
Yeah.
didn't want anything like that to be clear. They basically wanted each viewer to
And
have their own
I kind of
experience.
appreciate that, like, the Plemons scene, you don't even know what side Plemons is on, and
Mm,
he's a horrible person.
it's a really bad guy.
Yeah.
Is there any, Zendaya type of thong scene in this
I
movie?
thought you asked if Zendaya showed her thong in this movie too. I was gonna say, "No." No, nothing sexy in this movie.
Oh, alright.
But
Yeah,
it
I would
also
watch
they never told us this movie was sexy.
it's true. They did tell you it was a war, it failed on
They
there. So
did tell you it was a war, and there was
one
a war.
failed on the sex aspect, one failed on the war aspect.
And is that my own personal problem where I'm like, I was expecting this and we didn't get this?
No, so I think on Civil War, that's an everyone problem. Challengers, that seems to be a little more personal for you, yeah.
When
But
I'm
I
saying
also think
sexy, I want sexy.
so this is both a commentary on you and I and the people reviewing these movies. The amount of hours logged into porn between you and I, based on the people reviewing this movies, means that automatically that is not going to be as sexy to us as it is to them.
No, I think that in a regular movie that is not pornography, if you do
Okay.
something a little sexy, I'll give it a little like, "Oh, that's pretty sexy."
Like the girl next door. Can I come in? I'm all wet. Can I come in?
Yes, that's my
Great
first
scene.
thought immediately, is always the girl next door.
Well, I'm trying to think of like a non R-rated sexy movie.
No, that's
That's the first
R-rated.
thing that came up. Is it?
Yeah, R-rated, and then you watch the unrated version too.
All right. Well, there you go. We're,
Mhm.
we're experts on sex over here at the Mac Movie
Experts.
Program. Next up, speaking of X, Godzilla X Kong, the new empire. This hit theaters on March 29th. It is currently digitally streaming. It is a PG-13 action, adventure, and fantasy, just under 2 hours. That's 115 minutes. On Roddy T's, again, a big split. 54% from the critics, 91% from the audience. The critics gave it a 47 on Metacritic. And to put that in context, because this is the 5th movie in this franchise that began in 2014, Godzilla in 14 got a 76-66 split. Skull Island got a 75-70 split. King of the Monsters in 2019 got a 42-83 split. That movie's not very good. I don't know how that had the highest audience score up to that point. Godzilla vs. Kong in 2021, which I thought was better than King of the Monsters, but probably not as good as Skull Island. That got 76-91. A lot of people really like that. However, that movie I think is like skewed by that was one of the bigger releases after COVID. So I think people just really wanted to see a popcorn movie. And on Metacritic, the 2014 Godzilla got a 62. Skull Island got a 62. King of the Monsters a 48. Godzilla vs. Kong a 59. So I think really those first two, Godzilla and Skull Island, are a little bit different than these last three. These last three have been sort of crossover or bigger, really actual monster movies, as opposed to those first two, which are monster movies, but rely so heavily on the human characters for better or worse. This movie is written by Terry Rossio, who you would know from Aladdin, Shrek, a couple Pirates movies, Deja Vu, and Godzilla vs. Kong. Quite the career he's had. If you like him, he's doing the upcoming Johnny Quest movie, as well as one of those Pirates reboots or spin-offs, whatever direction you're going there. Adam Wingard and Simon Barrett. Simon Barrett wrote VHS and Blair Witch. This is directed by Adam Wingard, who directed VHS, Blair Witch, and Godzilla vs. Kong. Synopsis: two ancient titans, Godzilla and Kong, clash in an epic battle as humans unravel their intertwined origins and connection to Skull Island's mysteries. This stars Rebecca Hall as Eileen Andrews. We saw her in the last movie. Brian Tyree Henry as Bernie Hayes. We saw him in the last movie, I believe, too. Dan Stevens' new character as Trapper, and Kaylee Hoddle as Gia. We saw her in the last movie as well. So the big thing here is in the last movie, they introduced this like hollow earth concept where all these monsters like came from, which is like neither here nor there. It's like, I guess when you come to these movies, you obviously have to suspend disbelief, but at a certain point, like things got to make sense too. And I feel like nothing in this universe makes sense.
Yeah, I have not been pulled in to see this. There's nothing, and I liked the last movie to a certain degree. I really liked Kong Skull Island, but the Godzilla stuff just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah, I agree. The Zilla stuff is the weakest stuff. That 2014 Godzilla movie, I don't even know if I've seen it from beginning to end in one sitting. I've definitely seen the movie, but I think it's like over 6 sittings. A Skull Island, I think I gave it 27 hot dogs, which I liked it, but that felt like a wasted opportunity with the actors they had in that movie.
I don't know.
King
John
of the
C. Reilly was
Monsters,
pretty sweet.
they just they just wasted him though. Like I don't know.
Yeah, he came
And
in right at the
Tom
right.
Hiddleston, Brie Larson, and John C. O'Reilly, and neither really got
John
enough
C.
screen time.
Reilly, not O'Reilly.
Yeah, fuck you.
Oh, 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 O'Reilly.
King of the Monsters, I had at like
Oh, oh.
19 or 20. Didn't care for that. The most recent movie, Godzilla vs. Kong, 2021, I think I gave that 25, so just above the equator. But like, it's your classic popcorn movie. Like, it tried to do a little bit too much of the human story, and this is a lot like that one. I have this at 24 hot dogs, number 12 movie of 2024. Again, they really love inserting the human characters into this fucking gigantic battle among these titans. Um, you get introduced to a group of people that have been living in this hollow earth. Like some of it's just like, oh, all right, like
Were
fine,
they
whatever.
mole
Just
people?
what's that?
Were they mole people?
No.
Nah.
You just want to get to like the big monster fights. So like it does a decent job with that. The villain is probably better. The monster villain is probably
Oh, it's
better
a
than
big
any.
orangutan, right?
Yeah, it's like a different type of ape who's been living in Hollow Earth for thousands of years. And Godzilla gets a metal upgrade on his arm. They also introduce an ice dragon to battle against Godzilla. So like once you get into the thick of things here, there's a decent like monster movie. Again, there's just way too much human stuff. So it's a lot like the last one. If you like the last one, you're probably going to like this. If you didn't like the last one, I don't think you're going to like this. But if once it's free streaming and you're looking for a popcorn movie, this might be up your alley.
I'll check it out.
Next one up, Late Night with the Devil.
Yeah.
March 22nd. This was in theaters briefly. This is currently streaming for free on AMC Plus. Otherwise, you got to rent it. This is a rated R horror movie with a runtime of an hour and 33 minutes, 93 minutes, pretty crisp in and out. On Roddy T's, 97% from the critics, 81% from the audience. On Metacritic is 72. The writers on this movie are the same as the directors, Cameron Carnes and Colin Carnes. I'm assuming brothers, maybe lovers, who knows. This stars David Desmalchian, Laura Gordon, and Ian Bliss. The premise, a live television broadcast in 1977 goes horribly wrong, unleashing evil into the nation's living rooms. Goo,
Yes.
right off the top here,
Mhm.
my favorite thing about this movie was that it was kind of set in the real world in 1977. Like they allude to real life things. I enjoyed that.
So I love the feel of this. I love how it's a period piece. I love David Desmalchian. I love the 90-minute runtime. And I like how the horror was not over the top. It felt like it so there's a possession in this movie, but
Mhm.
it wasn't this, like, crazy, "This couldn't happen" type of thing. It was just a little girl was taken over.
I thought this was on the verge of being a great movie,
Mhm.
but it just sort of never really crossed over into great territory to me. I enjoyed it. I was intrigued by it the whole time. It just never did anything that made me say, "Oh, that was cool," or "Oh, that was awesome."
Yeah,
It just was like it was perpetually like, "Oh, this is decent."
I would say the last 5-ish minutes, I'm not even sure how long that last sequence
It
was.
was like a fever dream at the end there you're
The
talking
fever
about.
dream at the
Yeah.
end had me just saying, "What the hell?"
Yeah. What the
Which
hell?
which was great. I really liked that sequence.
Yeah, so a lot of this movie is build up too,
Yes.
to that last like 15 minutes. And that last 15 minutes is definitely the best part of the movie. Um, I just could have used more of that last 15 and a little less of the buildup. They really want to immerse you in this
Yes.
1977 era, and they do a good job of that. However, that takes a while. All of that is a while. And you're also pretty intrigued in the relationship between Des Melchin's character and the psychologist.
Yeah.
And you don't get really any backstory to that, which was obviously a decision they made. I bet there's another cut of this movie that's like 20 minutes longer that has more of that
You didn't
stuff.
need it though. I didn't need it.
I needed a little something to punch it up. I liked this movie, but I thought it was going to be great and just never quite got there. So I gave this 30 hot dogs. That might be a little low. This might be more in like the 32 range.
Yeah.
Number 7 movie of 2024 for me, but this is pretty good. And um, more of the horror I like. Now it is dealing with possession, but they keep it in an element of realism for long enough that you're
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm buying into sort of what they're going for here.
I also love how the entire you feel like, "Oh, David Dismelchian's character, he's a really nice guy." But you can also tell that he's a great big television phony and doesn't really care what anyone else thinks
Well,
besides himself.
they also purposefully, and again, that's why I say there's definitely another version of this movie that maybe the directors intended originally. They set up this whole thing with him in the woods in California, all that
Yeah.
stuff that you feel like they're going to pay off at some point, and they just don't.
Well,
It's
they
just
kind of do
like,
at the end.
no, they don't. It just
Well,
goes
the
by the
devil knows what's
wayside.
going on.
It goes by the wayside because then you're thinking in your head, okay, this demon is sort of connected to that group of people, and they just never make that connection. They just never do that. So that was a little frustrating too. So I did feel like this got cut up a little more by the studio than the directors would have wanted. I feel like the director's cut of this movie is probably 4 or 6 dogs better than what we got.
Did anything in this movie scare you?
No, and that was a little frustrating too. Again, it was getting to the point where I was uneasy, but I
Mhm.
was never really scared. Like it made me uneasy enough that I was like on the edge of my seat, but like I never was outright scared of what was going on screen.
Yeah, the uneasy stuff is definitely there because I love the look of like the Vaseline camera of what the
Yeah.
1970s was. And then it was more just interesting than anything else by the end.
Yes, that's a good word for it. The girl that plays the main like horror character here,
Mhm.
she did a great job. She was fucking great, and most of what she had to do was just like facial work, you know. So credit to her. She's gonna have a pretty good acting career. I'm guessing. I didn't notice her from anything prior to that, but I liked this movie. Again, I think there's a much better version of it. It was trending down that path, but it is a fun little horror movie.
I got it at
Uh,
32.
yeah, so maybe that's what I should have it at. I got it at 30, but I think it's in that range. Next up is Snack Shack. Snack Shack was in theaters briefly, I think, March 13th, currently streaming digitally. This is a rated R, like 1970s, 1980s period piece. When is this set?
Early 90s.
1990s,
Yeah.
90s. Um, Hour and 52 minutes, just under 2 hours. On Roddy T, 77% from the critics, 88% from the audience, a 64 on Metacritic, written and directed by Adam Remier. I don't know how to pronounce that. Nebraska City, 1991. Two best friends get the chance to run the swimming pool snack shack that later comes to be the perfect scenario for transgression, fun, personal discovery, and romance. The stars of this are Connor Sherry, Gabriel LaBelle, and Mika Abdallah. Um, this movie is like spiritual sequel is not the word, but it operates in the same world that like Wet Hot American Summer does.
but not in that silly fashion.
Not as silly, but it is a
I
little
don't think
silly.
it's that silly. No, so this movie
So are
took
you
off.
thinking this is more like Dazed and Confused type?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. I think it's more like that. And this movie, because I had no knowledge of it, it just popped up, was an absolute pleasant surprise. I had a really fun time with it. I thought all of the actors in it were great. I thought some stuff was a little over the top in like when the girl first meets the boy, she starts calling him like shit pig or something like that.
Shipbreak or something.
Like
Yeah.
people
What she
people
calls him
don't
the
do
whole
that.
movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people don't
Yeah.
don't do that. They're usually a little bit nicer. And while there is something in this movie that I hate the ending of it. I hate what brings the characters back together.
Yeah, the last like 10 minutes sucked ass.
I hated that. But there was a scene in this that I absolutely loved. And that is because both of the main characters, you forget this at points because they're running a business and they have a gambling thing at the beginning. They're trying to sell booze at one point, but they're 14-year-old boys.
Yeah.
And there's a scene where they're just shopping with their moms and they run into each other. And I fucking loved that scene. And the main character's just shopping with his mom and he picks up a bag of popcorn. He's like, can we get this? I don't know why. I thought that was so good. I thought it was so charming. Of like,
So
I remember
I
back to being like that and just being like, hey mom, can we get this?
yeah, so I agree. There's like a 30 to 40-minute span of this movie where it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I just had such a hard time buying into that girl who is a very attractive female, even giving the time of day to these two fucking nerds. Like that was never gonna
It's a
happen.
lot like challengers.
She would have been definitely more interested in the lifeguard kid that we've seen in a couple things before. I like this movie. This movie had the fun vibes.
Yeah.
It just never. It just so I guess it's yeah. I guess you're right. It's probably is more Dazed and Confused, but it's
Yeah.
not nearly as good as that. You know what I
No,
mean?
no,
Like
no.
it's not.
It's not as good as that. It doesn't have the same type of characters throughout, any of the
Yeah,
memorable characters. I think it just
they needed more. Um, like how Dazed and Confused has like 40 characters.
yeah.
They needed to round out their characters more instead of keeping it so contained.
I mean, I think it's a charming period piece, and I like the coming of age story of it, and I just love the fact that like every once in a while you forget how old they are, and then they pop and they're like, oh, it's just a kid.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a trouble with that too. They felt like they were 17, not 13,
I was like, it
14.
felt at points like they were about to be going to college or something, as
Yeah,
opposed to just be going to high school.
if they felt more super bad age than they did fucking freshmen in high school. So
Yeah,
that was a little tough to buy as well. I did like the dynamic between the two. And again, like the hijinks that gets involved with the snack shack is
yeah,
pretty good. They should have done more. But again, this was a pretty small budget movie.
yeah,
I think if this had a bigger budget, it would have been better. But I agree, a generally enjoyable movie. I was expecting this to be like a 15 dog movie,
yeah,
and I gave it, I think, 27. So
yeah. I would
it's
say I'm
much
right
better.
around like 28, 29.
It's much better than it has any business being. I have it, so it's my number 9 movie of 2024. It's definitely it's enjoyable enough to give it a free
It's just
watch.
that
Anyways,
something happens so abruptly with 15
yeah,
minutes left
yeah.
that brings all the characters back together that I hated.
And the two friends are a bit too extreme.
Mhm.
Like they should have been a little more similar than they were. That was like the shithead friend is too big of a shithead for me. Like that was a little much. But again, we're dealing with low budget and actors most of us have never seen. So for that, it does a pretty damn good job. All right, so let's get to Max Sack Goo.
Let's get into Max Sack.
And Max, that could be anything it could be about. And Mac, has this ever happened to you?
Oh,
You're walking around New York City.
mm-hmm.
The air is just it's too moist and your hair cannot
Yeah,
handle it.
it's so moist.
And your hair just can't handle it. Your big bouffant is just flopping in your face and you need to leave your family to get a haircut.
I can't say that's ever happened to me, but I will say the humidity of Memorial Day weekend was quite high. And as a fellow that was just trying to tan his bald head, I had to wear a ball cap most of the weekend to catch the sweat. It was warm out there.
If you look at last episode, I have a full head of hair, which I would love to get more haircuts, but they're too expensive and work schedule not great with when barbers are open.
Mm.
I was in New York and I was losing my mind. If there was a razor on the subway, I would have bicked my head.
Yeah, this is for a fella who cares a lot about his hair, you. This was
I
a
almost
weird
threw it all away. I
this
didn't
was a
care at
weird
that point.
choice. So you went to a random barbershop in New York City and just got a haircut in the
I
middle
said,
of
"Hey,
your
can you
holiday
please cut my
weekend.
hair?" "Yes, please cut my hair now."
And what's the what's the word I'm looking for? What's the general consensus on the haircut?
I have the issue of when I don't pay attention to it and I just wake up, it turns into a faux hawk, and my wife thinks it looks stupid.
Okay. All right. From this perspective, looking at you in Harry Potter's closet, I think it looks fine.
You know what
It
I
looks
don't
fine.
well, thank you. I actually I actually brushed my hair this morning. I spent time and
Okay.
I brushed my hair. You know what I
There you go.
did is I then took the brush and I brushed my mustache.
Your mustache does look very nice and feathered out. There you
Thank
go.
you, thank you. I took the time and I thought to myself, "I might buy a mustache comb."
Well, if you're going to continue to wear it as thick as you're currently wearing it, you definitely need one. That's for sure. Um, now that I'm staring at your hair,
Yeah.
I agree with your wife. There's less natural goo flop and more uppity faux hawk type
That's
stuff.
because I said take as much off the top as possible. I was
That's
in a
fair.
panic on Saturday.
So it was so basically now I did grow my hair out long enough once, but more hockey flow back and less up in the
Yeah,
front.
you look like Benjamin Franklin.
Um, essentially what happens was your hair just too heavy to support
My hair
itself.
was just it was too heavy, and it was happening to, like, my wife too, but she at least has, like, the mid part,
Yeah.
and it was just flopping over my face, and it goes beyond my nose, so I'm, like, trying to pull it over and shit.
You looked like Battinson.
Yep. I could not handle it. I couldn't handle it.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's not great. That's
No.
not great.
I hated it. Do we
Yeah.
even need your part of the sack?
No,
I
well,
filled it. I filled
part of it is interesting, so May was supposed to be a pretty good month for movies, and it turned out to not be so much, and On the Horizon is not great, Goo. The first couple weeks of June, we get Bad Boys 4: The Watchers, which is the, Shyamalan daughter movie, and Inside Out, so maybe Inside Out 2 is our next movie episode?
Yeah, Quiet
There's a
Place
weird in between here.
The Quiet Place prequel, that's the beginning of July?
Might be the end of June, might be the last week of June, yeah. And
Yeah,
then Deadpool 2, I think, is first week of July or second week of July. So we have what
I
was
crossed that
shaping up to be a good couple months of movies, and it's ending up not being so good at all. But again, maybe Furiosa is that movie that we've both missed, so I don't know. But yeah, we gotta figure out what we gotta do the next week and a half.
movies are back. Mac,
Maybe
where
we'll
can the
do a
people find
show
us?
finally.
Where can the people find us?
Fuck you. You can find us on Twitter and on Instagram at Mac and Goo Podcast. Every other platform is Mac ampersand Goo. It's Mac. It's just 7 Goo. That includes Facebook, Stitcher, TuneIn, Castbox, Spreaker, Google Play, iHeartRadio. Every oh no, I already did that part. We're on Spotify, but more importantly, we're on Apple Podcasts. Get on there, rate, review, subscribe. If you do that, we'll get you a Mac and Goo t-shirt from the folks over at Watertown Sportswear. That's Watertown Sportswear on 34 Mount Auburn Street in Watertown. WatertownSportswear.com, expert screen printing and embroidery.
tpublic.com
Merch.
merch. Find us at the end of the week for a news dump, and we'll figure out what we're going to do next week. Hibbidi-bop-bop-ba-dap-bop. Tuesdays are goose days. I abuse kangaroos. Damn Burton.
Bye.
Please flip the cassette over to side B to continue the adventure.